Distinguished guests, family and friends, welcome to our 2020 graduation ceremony. My name is Dr. Marla Koonin. I'm the Executive Dean for Strategy and Stakeholder Management here at the Vinci Institute, and it is indeed my honor to be managing the proceedings here tonight. May I please just request your cooperation on the following house rules? I know it's a little bit different than normal. So please do not use flash photography. Our photographers have set up all over the place strategically to get the lighting right, etc., and the photographs will be taken of you. Please do not leave your seat during the ceremony, and if we could please ask that all cell phones are turned onto silent. And we need to try and make sure, please, that our masks are kept on during the proceedings for everyone's safety and for COVID regulations when you are interchanging between guests. I will be sanitizing with each student, so my mask is off because I'm at a social distance. As the student comes up, you will hand over your name tag to me and then step back, and then I will be reading your abstract and sanitizing between each student to keep you all safe. And unfortunately, this year there will be no handshaking, so slightly different. You can do an elbow or something like that, but unfortunately no handshaking. And then for our online audience, could we please ask, I see everyone's mics are muted, but may we please ask that your mics remain muted. It's just for the surrounding noise. We will be live streaming the event as well as on all our various social media platforms. So without further ado, doctoral candidates, may I please ask that you rise for the procession and remain standing until the procession is in place. You may be seated. I now call on the Chair of the Davincians Institute Senate, Dr. Franzel de Plooijer-Cilliers, to officially open this graduation congregation.
By the power vested in me as the Chair of the Senate of the Vinci Institute, I hereby constitute this congregation as a lawful gathering of the Vinci Institute of Technology Management. Thank you.
So the exciting part begins. The Commissioner of SARS and the President of the Vinci Institute, Professor Edward Kisveta, our renowned 2020 laureate, Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman, Senate and Council members present, distinguished guests from industry, the community, faculty, family and friends, both present and online, and of course our most notable guests, our remarkable 2020 doctoral graduates, all protocol observed. Greetings, Groete, Lochani, Molo, Sawubona, Dumela, Avusheni, and welcome to this momentous occasion, the 2020 Davinci Doctoral Graduation Ceremony. The event is currently live streaming as we speak to YouTube, and although we will be taking pictures and videos of your special day and your special evening, and we'll be posting them on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, our website, and other social media platforms, we do also encourage you to tag us in your own photographs and your posts you share to our networks, because we do enjoy celebrating alongside all of our remarkable students. One of my favorite poets, Robert Frost, once said that two roads diverged in the woods, And I took the road less traveled, and that has made all the difference. Indeed, in the current times we are living, this could not be more true. For we've taken a path less traveled by having our graduations during the time of pandemic, and although it may have a different look and feel this year, we felt it critical to celebrate your special day in a remarkable way, and for all our graduates of the Vinci Institute. The other reason that this poem has significance is that a graduate that you have indeed become tonight has taken a path less traveled to the majority of the population, and no more so than a doctoral graduate. As the saying goes, with great power comes great responsibility, and your knowledge gained has indeed given you a power. But we hope that your experience at the Vinci Institute and your understanding of its ethos and principles have influenced you to want to create authentic, sustainable societies as agile, engaged, and aligned managerial leaders. We indeed hope that you will spread the return of social investment in so many of your research papers. Each of you has done a remarkable study. I've been privileged to sit on the panel of many of your thesis, and what we got a glimpse into is really something that for me has significant meaning, because it is not only just about doing research for the sake of research, but about the actual social investment, social return on investment, and the social context that every single one of you sitting here today took into account for your research. So this evening, we're going to get a glimpse into it. When you come up, we will be reading each of your abstracts. As you stand before the congregation today, I hope you will remember these deconstructed words of Leonardo da Vinci and Maya Angelou. Learning is the only thing the mind never exhausts, never fears, and certainly never regrets. You are now equipped to be an ecosystemic thinker, a word I'm sure you're a little bit tired of at Da Vinci. But this is about recognizing how everything and everyone co-connects in some way and connects to everything else. For the noblest pleasure is the joy of understanding. If you are always trying to be normal, which we certainly hope none of you are, you will never know how truly amazing you can be within yourself. It is indeed a pleasure for me to call up a remarkable man to introduce some of our honored guests this evening. That is, of course, you. He's a man who needs no introduction for Da Vinci, a systemic thinker who provides a holistic approach to problem probing and considers a wide variety of transdisciplinary principles in every conversation he has and project he tackles. The CEO and the principal of the Da Vinci Institute, Professor Benjamin Anderson.
Thank you very much, Marla, and to everybody, welcome tonight. It's quite special to think that although the world is looking quite differently than we anticipated when we started this year, that we could be gathering here the way we are. I think COVID-19 has made it possible for a number of you to complete your studies. We've got another cohort of students actually graduating in 4 months' time because of the great result that the pandemic brought for the PhD stock at Da Vinci. But tonight is about you. And I would just like, in a very short way, want to welcome each of you in a personal note. I want to welcome Indira Bangaloo and Troy Bangaloo. I want to welcome Pumalelela Ezra Ndlomo, as well as Busi Ndlomo. To Petrus Johannes de Toy and Johan van der Westhuizen, please feel welcome. Dan, Munsami, Ilapa, and Ethan Ilapa, welcome. Sifiso Falala and his colleague Mpulelo Nleya. For some reason, I will remember Sifiso's oral in a very specific way. It really made an impact, Sifiso, so welcome here for me. To Johanna Katarina Janse van Rensburg-Welling and Gerard Welling, very welcome at Da Vinci. Guy Drummond Leach and Nicola Leach, welcome. To Mboneni Leonard Muofe and his wife Nomtha Muofe, we come a long journey. It's great to have you here from the Department of Science and Innovation. And we are all celebrating tonight with you. To Premi Nika and Kinu Nika, welcome, Premi. Premi is also involved now as one of our council members. So we're very pleased that you also joined us tonight. To Chippo, Eugenia Ndutso, and Johannes Musihiwa, welcome a lot to Da Vinci. To Patience Nyao and Charity Madiba, welcome tonight. You came a far way. Great to have seen you early this morning and yesterday even, so we hope that you enjoy the evening. To Esti Safontaine and Franzel Leeton, welcome to you guys for joining us tonight. To Claudia Lavelle Sigamoni and Tyron Sigamoni, welcome to you guys also. And then also, last but not the least, to Nzo Mutsangura, coming a very long distance also, welcome tonight. And with those few words, I want you to sense that even for your family members who are joining in on the stream, we really honor not just you as an individual for having achieved this apex qualification, but also because of the family and the partners and the community that actually journeyed with you whilst being busy, toiling, burning the midnight oil, reflecting down, and reflecting and reflecting. But welcome to this very special event. We tried to make it personal amidst all the regulations, so bear with us. But I hope that you enjoy being with Da Vinci and your peers tonight. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Prof. Anderson. Before I open the proceedings in terms of requesting the chair to confer the qualification, so you will be, as you know, you will be coming up, so if I could please just ask, if you're sitting down, I see some of you have taken your mask off, that's fine, but when you come up, because I'm not wearing a mask, if you would just put it on. Those of you that are taking photos and want to pull it down for the photo, you are able to do so. Louise will be keeping hers on. So you are able to, where the photographs are taken, our council members will maintain and keep theirs on. Okay, so now becomes the exciting part. What will happen now is I will request the chair in a formal request to open the proceedings and to confer your qualifications, after which the first candidate will come up and we will be reading the abstracts and thesis titles of each candidate. Chairperson, I request to you to confer the qualification Doctor of Philosophy in Management of Technology and Innovation on the candidates that I will be presenting to you this evening. I would like to call on Professor Klopper, who is the Executive Dean of Research and Institutional Partnerships at the Institute, to join us in front to congratulate the students. He will stand along with Dr. Deploy Saliers and Sachaba Motsiloa, the Chair of the Da Vinci Institute Council. I now call on the first candidate to step forward. Thank you. Indira Bagalu. Thesis title, Evaluating the Transfer of Learning Through a Collaborative Learning Framework, a case study of a South African retail bank. Indira was supervised by Professor K. Govender and co-supervised by Dr. J. Dickinson. Indira's abstract reads as follows. This study reports on a case study conducted at one of the 5 leading South African retail banks intended to critically examine factors that enable the transfer of learning in the organization and evaluate if collaborative learning interventions enable sustainable strategic organizational shifts. The study aims to evaluate the impact of a collaborative learning intervention to enable sustainable strategic organizational shifts. The study followed a qualitative approach using inductive reasoning and purposive sampling methods, whereby 70 sales consultants and 50 sales leaders were selected for personal interviews using a semi-structured questionnaire. The participants were from 10 regions, divisions, channels, namely the Free State and Central Region, Gauteng Central Region, Gauteng South and East Region, KwaZulu-Natal Region, Limpopo and Mpumalanga Region, Management and Support Services Divisions, Sales Fulfillment Division, Tshwane and Northwest Region, and the Western Cape Region. The findings led to the need for systems thinking that help develop basal frameworks of applied learning and the attributes that enable learning. The findings resulted in the development of a learning framework that could be applied in the organization that desired to use learning interventions to change behaviors that enable strategic organizational shifts. The framework could also be used as a compass for a collaborative, systemic, leader-led approach to learning by identifying roles and responsibilities, defining design principles, and measuring the impact of the intervention. We congratulate you, Dr. Bagaloo. We now call on our second candidate to step forward. Thank you. Phumelela Ezra Dlomo. Thesis title, Creating a Sustainable Competitive Advantage Through Reputation Management for Small Medium Enterprises in the Tourism Industry in the Gauteng Province, South Africa. Supervisor, Professor N. Chilia. The abstract reads as follows. Those small medium enterprises play a significant role in economic development. A bit of a tongue twister there. They tend to be ignored when needs arise to design sustainable, competitive strategies for their long-term survival. Over the years, research studies on the concept of reputation management has been focused on large corporations with an aim of establishing what could be regarded as reputation and/or reputation management. Very little work was done previously to establish how reputation management affects the SMEs. Thus, a gap was identified, motivating this study to investigate the influence of reputation management in creating a sustainable competitive advantage for small, medium enterprises operating in the tourism industry in the Gauteng province of South Africa. A positivist research philosophy was adopted and used in the study. This quantitative study collected data through the use of a questionnaire and analyzed using statistical analysis. The study established a strong relationship between organizational identity, reputation management, compared to sustainable competitive advantage. A strong positive relationship between organizational identity, reputation management compared with business performance was also revealed in the study. The study also revealed a strong positive relationship between sustainable competitive advantage and business performance. The study revealed that there was no relationship between resources and capabilities and business performance. The study recommended that SMEs could make use of reputation management to obtain a sustainable competitive advantage and ultimately achieve business performance through two ways. Firstly, using the models showing the strongest positive relationship between constructs, and secondly, the use of constructs that showcase the moderate positive relationship between the constructs. Thus, the study suggested a reputation management framework for small, medium enterprises. We congratulate you, Dr. Dlomo. We now call up our next candidate. You can step forward, sir. Thank you. Okay, exciting times. Petrus Johannes de Toy. Thesis title, Transformatology, the Art and Science of Enhancing Continuous Change, supervised by Dr. R. Blom. The abstract reads as follows. The aim of the research study was to propose an alternative framework for enhancing continuous change as an ongoing change management instrument. The objectives of the study were quadruple. In the first instance, it was to determine the elements that would encourage the endurance of continuous change initiatives. Secondly, to establish the role of the managerial leaders during the change occurrences. Thirdly, to develop intelligence for affection, cognition, and behavioral traits as characteristics of a multidimensional change construct. And lastly, to formulate the components that would constitute the proposed framework. The study followed a qualitative approach as the mode of inquiry based on the subjective, relativist, ontological perspective of the researcher, who uses system thinking lens as an interpretivist, constructivist epistemology to explore the research questions. The study sought to place a different perspective on the field of change management, in that change is much deeper rooted than simply altering structures, processes, and systems in organizations, causing people to change their behavior. The study concluded that change is ongoing as opposed to its linear phenomenon in both organizational and societal contexts. In addition, the findings that emerged from the research contextualize change as a systemic, complex, and holistic phenomenon. The complex, holistic concepts of change traverse disciplinary boundaries in the fields of behavioral and business management, encompassing interconnected and interdependent components that materialize in a change fractal. These components of the proposed conceptual framework that occur as a change fractal are the transformation thinking perspectives of the individual, change as an ongoing journey, and the role of the managerial leader in change. The emergent framework for enhancing continuous change as an ongoing change management instrument manifested in a workable and practical framework that may guide and assist managerial leaders towards enhancing continuous change. Congratulations, Dr. du Toit. Our next candidate, Dan Munsami Ilapa. Thesis title, The Role of Managerial Leaders Within High-Performance Organizations, the Development of a Conceptual Framework under the supervision of Professor B. Anderson. The abstract reads, despite the advances of research on high-performance organizations over the past 3 decades, there seems to be a lack of enabling managerial leadership frameworks that could be utilized by managerial leaders to enable the emergence of high-performance organizations. The paucity of relevant frameworks is particularly evident within developing socio-economic contexts. The purpose of the current research study is to contribute to the design and development of a managerial leadership framework that could facilitate the emergence of high-performance organizations. The study heeds the call for an integrated framework aimed at enabling managerial leaders to advance the emergence of high-performance organizations. This research study gathered insights using a grounded theory approach. Data was gathered through in-depth, semi-structured interviews and focus group interviews. The analysis resulted in the emergence of 7 comprehensive themes in applying a grounded theory approach. Subsequently, the themes informed the design and developed an integrated conceptual managerial leadership framework that could facilitate the emergence of high-performance organizations. The proposed integrated conceptual managerial leadership framework provides a dynamic and interconnected set of concepts managerial leaders could apply within the complexity of any organization. Thus, this research study contributes to the research fields of organizational leadership, development and change, and offers possibilities for future research on the application of the framework. The research findings resulted, amongst others, in the development of practical tools for use by prospective managerial leaders and practitioners in the process of enhancing the emergence of a high-performance organization. The tools include a conceptual framework generated from the 7 comprehensive themes, as well as a set of high-performance metaphors to be utilized to enable high performance. The tools can be applied by practitioners to engage organizations in meaningful and purposeful conversations towards high performance within a developing socioeconomic context. These advancements are intended to add value to the scope of existing knowledge regarding high-performance organizations. Congratulations, Dr. Ilapa. I present to you our next candidate, Sifiso Falala. Thesis title, The Development of a Competency Framework for Chief Executive Officers of State-Owned Enterprises in South Africa, under the supervision of Dr. G. van Rensburg. The abstract reads that this study sought to establish a framework for the measurement of competence of the Chief Executive Officers of a state-owned enterprise. We will refer to it as an SOE from now on in the abstract. The study sought to identify and explain the variables or individual competencies that have taken together can provide a substantive measure of a chief executive officer's competencies. 3 of the largest and most economically significant SOEs, Eskom, South African Airways, and Transnet, were chosen as case studies. Apart from the economic and strategic national importance, the 3 SOEs were also in the public domain, with SAA and Eskom affecting significant numbers of households and businesses directly. Transnet, followed by Eskom, employed the largest number of staff amongst the SOEs in South Africa. Mixed methods were used subsequently and sequentially in the form of focus groups, in-depth interviews, and structured questionnaire surveys administered partly face-to-face and partly telephonically. The qualitative method sought to define, break down, and organize the respondents' understanding of competence. The qualitative research respondents were management in the top 3 tiers of the companies they worked for, sourced from both the public and private sectors, using convenient sampling methods. The respondents in the structured interviews were employees of SOEs, customers of SOEs, suppliers of SOEs, and the business peers or interest groups such as business chambers. The study contributes towards the understanding and measurement of CEO competency in SOEs, introducing a unique framework with 19 attributes or competencies, as well as an abridged framework with 6 competencies. A scoring table of the top 10 competencies usable for annual appraisals is provided with the weighted scoring criteria of various aspects contained in the framework. The relative weights associated with each competence were statistically derived using the regression analysis output. Congratulations, Dr. Falala. It gives me great pleasure to announce our next candidate, Johanna Katarina Janse van Rensburg Welling. Thesis title, Accessible Career Paths for Students with Different Degrees of Hearing Loss at the National Institute for the Deaf. Supervised by Dr. J. Mitchell and co-supervised by Dr. W. Huisen. Dr. Janse van Rensburg Welling's abstract reads as follows. Hearing loss is referred to as an invisible disability because, unlike physical disability, hearing loss is not observable by the layman and requires expert consideration, especially in the early stages of one's life. As such, it presents unique challenges to those affected and the people and organizations that provide appropriate training and support for them. In South Africa, there's a large population of people who are faced with challenges of having limited access to education and the resulting poverty. While there have been studies on the education of school learners with different degrees of hearing loss, no studies have been made on the post-school training and employability of deaf students. A case study research model that included a mixed method approach was used to investigate how people with different degrees of hearing loss could best be served in training and finding employment. The site of the study was the National Institute for the Deaf, which I will call the NID after this, in South Africa, a non-profit company and a registered public benefit organization. The NID has positioned itself as an organization that offers and delivers a diverse range of services exclusively for people with hearing loss. The investigation occurred in 5 phases, namely document review and literature study, analysis of the training model in use, NID college model, the development of 2 industry training models, piloting the 2 industry training models, analysis of the success of the 2 new models of training. The research was mainly qualitative in nature and included a variety of qualitative methods, including document review, semi-structured interviews, development and piloting of the 2 models of training, and assessing the reactions of various stakeholders to the 2 new models. Some quantitative elements were also included in the study. The research was placed within an interpretivist paradigm. Purposeful sampling allowed for information-rich participants who could provide authentic information. There were 6 groups of participants in the research, namely students studying on the campus, the NID college model, students studying off campus but enrolled at the NID, both industry trading models, alumni of the NID who had been part of previous work placement initiatives, facilitators of the NID, staff members of the NID Integrated Support Services, and finally, employers of NID alumni. As a recommendation, a new, inclusive, sustainable training ecosystem is suggested, in which students are trained off campus on the site of a business that offers additional training from industry experts and envisages absorbing as many alumni as possible. Congratulations, Dr. Janse van Rensburg-Welling. We now call on our next candidate. Guy Drummond Leach. Thesis title, Air Connectivity Conceptual Models to Address the Allocation of Resources to African Air Transport, supervised by Professor J. Chikada. Dr. Leach's abstract reads, this study had 2 broad objectives. The first objective was to propose a broad conceptual model to quantify the challenges confronted by the African airline industry. The second objective was to identify the challenges which inhibit the industry's ability to provide the required level of air transport connectivity and use the proposed model to prioritize the challenges as the basis for a remediation strategy. An interpretivist philosophical assumption informed this study, resulting in the use of an inductive reasoning approach. The study is exploratory in nature, and data was collected, analyzed, and interpreted through a mono-qualitative research method. Open-ended questions were derived from the literature and used as prompts for interviews with airline industries, CEOs. Data was also collected from industry reports, conference proceedings, and connectivity metrics, enabling the triangulation of the data. The study proposed a conceptual model to enable policymakers to contextualize air connectivity and economic growth. The study then proposes the African Air Connectivity Model, referred to as the AACM. This model enables the challenges facing African air connectivity to be quantified for application to the conceptual model. The study's findings as to the challenges facing the African air transport industry revealed that lack of air route liberalization, management weaknesses, state protection, lack of competition, connectivity challenges, and the need for partnerships were key challenges faced by this industry. Despite a shortage of data, it was possible to pilot test the model by applying it to an Ethiopian case study over a 10-year period. I think you'll all agree that's quite remarkable in itself. The key finding from this case study was that $4.8 billion investment in air connectivity may be associated with a $50 billion increase in GDP, providing an approximate 10 times multiplier on the initial investment. With due regard to the problems of causality in relating air connectivity to GDP, the pilot test of the AACM model enabled a quantification of how improved air connectivity reduces distance in the gravity model of trade, enabling less connected places to specialize and improve their competitive advantage and participation in global value chains. The study prepares the ground for more specific African air connectivity modeling in order to broaden the scope of further cost-benefit analysis for best practice solutions. Quantifying the benefits of air connectivity improvement may serve to motivate a project management approach to address the challenges to air connectivity on the basis of informed decisions taken by policymakers on how and where best to invest limited resources. Congratulations, Dr. Leach. I introduce to you Mboneni Leonard Moefe. Thesis title, Bridging the Innovation Chasm, How South Africa Can Retrieve Itself from the Conundrum. Supervisors, Professor R. Marcus, and co-supervisor, Dr. B. Day. The abstract reads, in this study, the researcher critically analyzed and evaluated South African science and innovation policies and strategies, as well as their implementation approach. The policy implementation approach was compared with approaches of selected countries. An interpretivist, constructivist research paradigm was adopted. The analysis of literature and policies was complemented with interviews and qualitative surveys. Several case studies were also considered in order to establish ways by which innovation can be used to enhance the impact and return on investment from research in the South African economy. The research findings confirm that the innovation policies that were developed from 1994 to date and the related sector-specific strategies are good and compare well with those of advanced and other emerging economies. However, there are considerable fault lines when it comes to implementation and the relevance of policies to local challenges. It is clear from the findings that in both policy formulation and in implementation, there is limited application of systems thinking. The shortcoming manifests itself through poor intergovernmental coordination, fewer engagements with the private sector, civil society, and communities at large. The innovation chasm as a wicked problem requires a high level of consultation and coordination. Most critically, this study demonstrates the need to review the process of policy formulation and implementation, which is centralized at the national level, to start including provinces and local governments. Inclusive planning will enable effective decentralization of policy and strategic implementation and build the culture of accountability at a local level. The research further proposes a framework for policy formulation and execution that is inclusive and systemic. If the South African science system is to achieve the vision stated by the Department of Science and Innovation, the framework appreciates the interdependence that are part of the wicked problems, and it systematically balances the interest of all stakeholders towards a national goal of a prosperous nation through science. The framework also guides policymakers on deciding which interventions could be supported and funded in different provinces in order to minimize implementation failure and a lack of socioeconomic impact. Most importantly, the framework promotes localization of innovation systems that can help facilitate the bridging of the innovation chasm and bring about direct employment and economic opportunities at local district level. The study also recommends the development and implementation of a domestic innovation procurement policy to stimulate the demand for local innovations by making it attractive for both government and private sectors to procure homegrown innovations. There is evidence that the proposed framework can also enhance South Africa's timely response to emerging challenges such as the COVID-19 pandemic. Parts of this framework were deployed with success to address the shortages of PPEs, ventilators, and testing kits through local manufacturing. The framework is also being used to guide the implementation of the Sovereign Innovation Fund, which has just been recently launched to support technology commercialization. I congratulate you, Dr. Moefe. We welcome our next doctoral candidate, Premi Nika. Thesis title, Integral African Feminine Leadership, Pioneering an African Way of Individual, Organizational, and Community Development, the Case of Green Skills Enterprise in Community. Premi was supervised by Professor A. Schiffer and Professor R. Lessem. Dr. Nika's abstract reads as follows. It's exciting hearing it for the first time, I know. The aim of this research to innovation journey is to understand as well as to conceptually and practically enhance how South African and African feminine business leaders are developing themselves as well as their organizations for sustainability in the 21st century. The purpose of this research to innovation journey is to illustrate the process of building an integrated leadership and organizational model by building self-awareness and self-reliance, and to explore processes to strengthen women's authentic power and to expand their influence in leadership roles. The research methods and methodology employed follows the Eastern Path of Renewal of Lessem and Schaefer's approach to integral research. In addition to the 4 levels, the study engaged at both the individual and collective level by using the 4 C's trajectory of call, context, co-creation, and contribution, as well as the care trajectory of community activation, awakening consciousness, transformative research, and transformative education, and enterprise research design. The individual and collective context was further explored with the help of 4 trans framework, embracing transpersonal, transcultural, transdisciplinary, and transformational perspectives, with hermeneutics as the research methodology, underpinning this contextual foundation of the Eastern Path of Renewal. This methodology assisted in further discovering the imbalances and the untapped potentials in order to develop a practical solution on how to address these imbalances. In addition, the study employed critical theory as emancipatory research, as an emancipatory research critique, as well as variations of feminist-based research methodologies to investigate, analyze, and subsequently develop a dual model of an integral African feminine leader, an integral enterprise and community framework. The study further also turned to John Heron's cooperative inquiry, action research methodology for individual and collective contribution, which evolved around the 4 models of knowing, experiential or empathetic knowledge, presentational or imaginal knowledge, propositional or conceptual knowledge, practical knowledge, and related it back to the dynamic internal spiral process of the gene rhythm embedded in the integral worlds approach. Our students certainly don't take it lightly. Through the process of engagement with the CI groups, which included data collection and data analysis, a new model and process was developed and translated into a pilot program, which was tested with the CI groups by going through iterations of action reflection cycles, which helped to collectively unearth and address some of the specific burning issues in relation to women empowerment and diversity in corporate South Africa, rising levels of unemployment and economic inequality amongst women and youth, education and skills development, lack of technology and social innovation skills for women and youth, lack of feminine leadership in business and in the information technology space. In addition, the study considered how the dual systems of integral African feminine leadership and integral enterprise and community could be combined in practice by applying them to green skills. This integration took place through a dynamic fourfold process called the 4 A's of assessing, aligning, augmenting, and applying. This process served to practically bring together and activate the concept base developed in this research to innovation into a new integral African feminine leadership, IAFL framework, to realize the gene, I-us, of the African feminine leader depicted by the mythical Sankofa bird as an African symbol of feminine renewal and leadership. In addition, such steps helped to work consciously and collaboratively towards institutionalizing the integral green skills enterprise and community framework. Congratulations, Dr. Nika. I introduce to you our next candidate, Chipo Yogina Ndudzo. Thesis title, African Enterprise Renewal Towards an Integral Enterprise, the Case of Providence Human Capital in Zimbabwe. Supervised by Professor R. Lessem and co-supervised by Professor A. Schiffer. The abstract reads, the thesis sought to articulate at once a profound scholarly critique of the colonial thesis, Arapros, the economic and indeed business failure in Africa in general and in Zimbabwe in particular, and proffer a practical solution thereof. This is delivered through a careful and thoughtful articulation of an African enterprise renewal premised on the integral development approach. This integral development approach takes seriously the rich endogenous economic and business knowledge passed from generation to generation. Thus, this thesis departs from the conventional knowledge generation and knowledge production discourses and adopts knowledge cultivation approaches. At the core of knowledge cultivation is the radical decolonial epistemic perspective of rethinking itself, particularly the conventional classic economic thought and business approaches cascading from external experts, think tanks, and multilateral financial institutions at the International Monetary Fund, World Bank, World Trade Organizations, and many others. The thesis contribution to knowledge is fourfold. The first is a clear methodological intervention premised on autobiographical life journey or the inner calling as a form of self-knowing in the making of a successful female business entrepreneur imbued with humanistic business practices that undercuts the capitalist drive for profits through exploitation of human labor. The second contribution is the epistemological and indeed theoretical innovation predicated on a decolonial, Afrocentric, and humanistic integral worlds approach, which enables not only a paradigmatic shift from epistemologies of the North and the epistemologies of the South, but also effective use of such new Africa-centered concepts that brings indigenous knowledge, community, culture, and consciousness into the business. The third contribution to knowledge is the practical and empirical innovation symbolized by a case study of a successful formation and operation of an African business enterprise known as Providence Human Capital within a constrained environment of Zimbabwe. Providence Human Capital is a paradigmatic example of the implementation of the integral worlds approach. The final contribution of this thesis is in the realm of ideological innovation, predicated of a systemic and consistent push to transform human consciousness, mindsets, self-perceptions, and how to relate self to society, the co-creation of life. The major findings of this thesis is the practical possibility of setting afoot business renaissance in Africa in general and in Zimbabwe in particular. As a result, what is emerging from this thesis is that through investment on community activation and awakening of human consciousness, The liberation of community from poverty, scarcity, and dependence on handouts is very possible. What is consistently and systematically demolished is the irrelevance of conventional enterprise approaches, which do not emerge from African epistemic, historical, and cultural context. This thesis provides a successful example of an African enterprise in practical economic decolonization and self-empowerment, spearheaded by a woman who genuinely engaged in the painstaking decolonial journey of learning to unlearn in order to relearn. Congratulations, Dr. Ndudzo. And I think we were part of that, and your singing of your team was absolutely beautiful at the end, so welcome. We cannot sing today, as it is not part of our country's protocol currently. Patience. Thanks, Patience. Gives me great pleasure to introduce to you Patience Nyawo. Thesis title, The Development of an Integrated Framework for Organizational Culture, Employee Creativity and Innovation in 2 Zimbabwean Manufacturing Companies. Supervisor, Professor C. Schultz. This study was motivated by the need to determine the impact of organizational culture on employee creativity and innovation in a slow growth economy like that of Zimbabwe. The research design methodology for the study was quantitative for phase 1 of the study and qualitative for phase 2 of the study. In the quantitative part, questionnaires covering organizational culture, employee creativity and innovation were sent out to employees at 2 Zimbabwean manufacturing companies. Factor analysis statistics were used to reduce many latent factors to a few manifest factors for the 3 variables, namely organizational culture, independent variable, employee creativity, dependent variable, and innovation, which was also a dependent variable. A multiple regression analysis was also performed. The quantitative results discussion pointed to an immensely powerful correlation between employee creativity, organizational culture, as well as innovation. Quantitative data results also indicated that the companies must create a culture that helps them to tap into employee creativity and innovation for commercial and societal financial good. In the qualitative part, the analysis of the interview response was done by using the TESH 2013 method using Atlas TI. The researchers' insight yielded 15 categories and 70 sub-themes on the relationships between organizational culture, employee creativity, and innovation. The qualitative data indicated that employees need to be empowered, listened to, and protected from fear and reprisals should certain innovations not succeed. Two-way communication, quick decision-making, research based on technology and the Internet of Things were some of the factors put forward by research participants as key to creativity and innovation, ultimately leading to companies' profitability and sustainability. I introduce to you Dr. Nyawo. Congratulations. I introduce to you our next candidate, Dr. Esti Sarfontein. Thesis title, Socio-Technical and Organizational Resilience in South African Commercial Flight Operations. Esti was supervised by Professor K. Govender. Dr. Sarfontein's abstract reads, this study contributed to the body of knowledge on socio-technical and organizational resilience achieved through cohesive application of internal control systems such as quality assurance and corporate governance in the flight operations subsector of the South African aviation industry. The motivation to supplement the body of knowledge stems from the rationale that internal control systems are superficially implemented and focused only on certain elements of an organization. The scope, diversity, and technical nature of the aviation industry necessitates robust internal controls to withstand the significant impact of fluctuations in the macro environment. Although these fluctuations can present challenges as well as opportunities, pivotal controls to ease adaptation to these fluctuations seem to be lacking in the South African aviation industry. This study addressed these controls on a theoretical, policy, methodological, and practice level through multi-level and multidisciplinary integration of various systems and resources within a specific context. Rooted in the South African context, this study explored the relationship between the industry and the macro environment to determine the specific changes or challenges that organizations need to adapt to. This exploration considered dimensions in the external environment, such as political, economic, sociocultural, technological, legal, and ecological stimuli. Through this exploration, a specific profile of the external environment to the flight operations subsector of the South African aviation industry is provided. This study is specifically considered two internal control systems, quality assurance and corporate governance, and control systems advocating the deliberate alignment of strategies, resources, components, and functions of the elements in the organizational system to achieve and maintain stakeholder satisfaction and overall improvement. This study assessed the nature and extent to which these control systems are currently implemented in the context of the study to identify resilience properties. The discourse to determine resilience properties was also applied to the potential relationship between quality assurance and corporate governance to identify prospective benefits of resilience stimulated through the cohesive application of internal control systems to withstand turbulence in the external environment. The nature of the current relationship between quality assurance and corporate governance manifests as being problematic, thus negating the theoretical, all-inclusive benefits and emergence of resilience in a socio-technical system. However, this study identified multiple socio-technical and organizational resilience properties in the potential collaborative relationship between quality assurance and corporate governance in the flight operations subsector of the South African aviation industries. These properties can be grouped into four categories, namely strategic management and organizational culture, monitoring and awareness, exposure management, and responsive adaptation. The study found that increased deliberation in the all-inclusive cooperative application of internal control systems eases the development of organizational resilience in a socio-technical system. In support of autonomous advancement of organizational resilience levels, this study provides a neoteric framework to reduce fragmentation in the application of internal controls and simultaneously promotes the organization's adaptive capacity. Congratulations, Dr. Serfontein. And I think it is also worth noting that Dr. Serfontein has actually already published multiple times off of her thesis, as I'm sure many of you also plan to or are in the process of. So really quite exciting times ahead for our students in this regard. Our next candidate is Claudia Lavelle Sigamoni, for noting, already doctor, so a second time around. Thesis towards a conceptual model to address factors hindering patients from accessing and navigating healthcare services in peri-urban communities in Johannesburg, South Africa. Dr. Sigamoni's abstract reads, this study developed a conceptual model to address factors hindering patients from accessing and navigating healthcare services in peri-urban communities in Johannesburg, South Africa. The motivation for undertaking this study was attributable to the plight of patients who fail to access or navigate and use healthcare services due to poverty, poor infrastructure, and geographic location. Failure to access healthcare services is contrary to the provisions of the South African Constitution, which makes it very clear that everyone in South Africa should not be denied access to healthcare services. By identifying the factors that hindered patients from accessing and navigating healthcare services, this study also identified gaps which require urgent attention. A mixed methods research method was adopted in the study. The target population was outpatients, administration, and medical personnel workers at various research sites. The study established that poverty healthcare systems, costly medical services, inability to communicate with healthcare service providers, and low levels of literacy to understand healthcare language were highlighted as major hindrances. Respondents and participants highlighted that unemployment contributed significantly to poverty levels, thus impeding access to healthcare services. Existing healthcare policies were identified as contributing to this disequilibrium, as it is believed that the legacy of apartheid created these policies to marginalize poor communities. The study recommended a review of existing healthcare policies where various stakeholders are involved. In addition, the planned implementation of the National Health Insurance is a welcome strategy which might address the current hindrances to accessing and navigating healthcare services. The study also recommended that South Africa needs a comprehensive social security system that provides an adequate and sustainable social protection for peri-urban communities, whilst the above remedial actions recommended required highly responsive, adaptive, and dynamic platforms. The public sector health reforms were negatively perceived. Thus, a conceptual model was developed to catalyze behavioral change in public and private healthcare systems to achieve affordable and sustainable improvement in accessing, navigating, and usage of healthcare services. Under the supervision of Dr. A. Manashen, we congratulate Dr. Sigamoni. We also thank you for your contribution to the healthcare sector. Last but certainly not least, we welcome, who is already Dr. Matsangura. So, Nodzo, welcome. Thesis title, The Essence of Entrepreneurship and Innovation for Rural Development, a Zimbabwean Study. Dr. Matsangura has been a doctor for some time, but has now been able to attend our graduation, which we are indeed honored that you were able to attend and graduate this evening with your class of 2018 having graduated. Dr. Matsangura has a title that reads, The Essence of Entrepreneurship and Innovation for Rural Development, a Zimbabwean Study, under the supervision of Dr. J.P. Muchinaripi and Dr. S.M. Carter. The abstract of Dr. Matsangura reads, The researcher's transformative journey began with an inner desire to awaken the entrepreneurial and innovative spirit within the rural community of Rosimbiro in Beatrice, Zimbabwe, as a case for sustainable development. The aim was to determine the effects of agglomeration of rural businesses on the growth and development of Rosimbiro, and then to consider the extent to which entrepreneurship and innovation could be used as a tool for economic growth and sustainable development in rural areas. The researcher also sought to formulate a framework by which entrepreneurship and innovation could consistently be replicated in other rural areas. This journey was motivated by an inner calling of genuine care for the marginalized and poor people in the rural communities. This linked with the outer challenge of alleviating poverty through empowering the rural communities living in poverty to be self-sufficient. The researcher followed the integral Four Worlds approach together with its underlying 4Cs framework of core, context, co-creation, and contribution. A key step was identifying the imbalances encountered in Rosimbiro with a view to alleviating them. These imbalances were classified as transformational, transcultural, transpersonal, and transdisciplinary at individual, organizational, community, and societal levels. Co-creation of the 4Cs introduced the double-layered fourfold trajectory, one layer being static and the other dynamic. The dynamic trajectory of co-creation is origination, foundation, emancipation, and transformation. The static trajectory is method, methodology, critique, and action research. These two trajectories run parallel with grounding, emerging, navigating, and effecting, titled Gene, with a choice of 4 research paths to choose from, namely the Southern Relational Path, the Eastern Path of Renewal, the Northern Path of Reason, and the Western Path of Realization. The researchers selected the 4-layered Southern Relational Path. The research methods were descriptive and phenomenological was the research phenomenology. Feminism was the emancipatory critique, and participatory action research was the action research. The complementary care foundation concluded with the activation and catalyzation of the community, as well as the institutionalization and universalizing newly created knowledge. The members of the community were active participants to the free-range chicken projects, the cattle, pen fattening projects, and tobacco farming. The research process resulted in the formulation of the Simba Mukaka Hungwe model, anchored in nature, culture, and community. The model borrows from the regenerative prowess of the African rural entrepreneur, idealized in the African proverb, Simba Mukaka, Rekapera Rinosinera. Sorry if I got the pronunciation wrong. Strength is self-regenerative and self-replenishing. It also borrows from the astute hunting proficiency of the Hungwe African fish eagle, long considered as the king of the bird and so revered in Zimbabwe for its cultural and mythical significance. Emanating from the research were several recommendations touching on property rights, long considered as the drivers of the development for rural entrepreneurs, the issues relating to collateral security and the bankability of land as a primary resource is a critical aspect for the rural entrepreneur. The research promotes the regenerative and self-renewing aspects of the model. The study has since triggered a second transformative wave in the Rusimboro research community, which is at an advanced stage in the implementation of the Rusimboro irrigation scheme. The conclusion drawn from the research is that entrepreneurship and innovation are indeed key drivers in economic growth and rural development. We congratulate in person Dr. Matsangura. My apologies to all our Zimbabwean colleagues if I mentioned those names incorrectly. Just as a note, we will be taking a group photo of all the PhDs outside on the steps directly after the ceremony. So when we end off, if I could please ask that everyone goes outside. Congratulations to all of our doctors. Let's have a round of applause. Indeed, a time to be proud of yourselves for your remarkable achievement. This is not an easy road you've taken. But there's someone this evening. You can be seated, Dr. Poisliers and Prof. Klopper. Sorry about that. Ladies and gentlemen, there's someone this evening who I think can certainly explain the hard work of a different kind of doctor. One of the highlights of our event is the Laureate Award. The construct of a laureate denotes a mark of honor, a person who is honored with an award for an outstanding and remarkable intellectual achievement. And our 2020 laureate is certainly fitting of this prestige and someone who I personally admire. I call on our chairperson of the Vinci Institute Council, Mr. Sachaba Motsiloa, to join us on stage to hand over this award to our esteemed 2020 laureates. Sorry, I'm just sanitizing for you.
Good evening. The Da Vinci Laureate Social architecture is conferred by the Council of the Vinci Institute for Technology Management on an individual or groups of individuals who, through insightful leadership and a passion for the development of communities and society at large, has made a significant and singular contribution to the redefinition of society and thereby creating an equitable society, facilitating self-directedness and embracing unity in diversity. A Da Vinci Laureate is expected to provide insights into complex systems, make contributions to the development of sustainable societies, be recognized amongst his or her peers for the exceptional contributions made within a specific domain of work, be recognized for honorable service to his or her country through applied engagements. A Da Vinci Laureate to distinguish himself or herself by engaging in specific domains within society and contributing to the reconfiguration of societal systems at large. I think it was worth just repeating the importance of this for us at the Da Vinci Institute. I would like to call upon Dr. Suleiman to come to the fore so that I can shake his hand. I don't think I'm allowed to. And then at the same time, allow you to give an opportunity for us to talk. Just give me a second. Okay, just hold on. Mala does the proper stuff.
Sorry, I just want to make sure. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Davincians Institute, Professor Kirswater, Professor Ben Anderson. I don't know everybody's names, sorry. But thank you very much for the invite and for this honor that you've given me. A special thank you to the guys that did the real hard work. All you 14 doctorate candidates who done amazingly well. I've been to many, many doctoral graduations, I must tell you. But you guys are really serious about your guys' thesis and the way you guys do things. Congratulations. The country needs people for innovation, education, studies. And before I go give you a little bit of my background, I just want to make a little comment about the doctoral thesis that we select. We find that universities throughout the country, many students go about doing doctorates. The important question is this: do we do a doctoral thesis just to tick the register, to get our degree, or we are serious about changing situations in the country? Do we study those doctorates or find innovative ways to find credible solutions to the multifarious problems in the different disciplines in our country? Because we have libraries full of research documents over and over again. Does anybody ever take those documents and implement it to better the lives of the people in this country? Universities have to look at that very seriously, because you put a lot of effort into this thing. It's years and years, or sometimes 2 years of hard work. You wait for months for the ethics committee to get you your approval, and then you sit for hours sacrificing your family. You have your course coordinators and those looking after you, your supervisors, checking what you're doing. But all that money is of no use if those doctorates are not implemented for the benefit of society. And I think universities should look at, when they select doctorates, is it going to be something valuable for the benefit of the country? And I've seen the categories or the theses you guys have done here, all very, very relevant, all very serious, and I hope it's going to be implemented in a way where you said you change the systems, you modify the systems, you improve the systems. Now, well, that's brilliant. If you do that kind of stuff to improve something, then you've done a great achievement for yourself and for the people you've done the research with. Whenever I address an audience, they all ask me, when did it start? And the message, the starting, the background is very, very relevant and impacts on a lot of people and society itself. It started, strangely, on a Thursday night, like tonight. It was the 6th of August, 1992. I was in Istanbul, in Turkey. I met a spiritual master, a Sufi teacher, in a Muslim holy place. It was post-Gulf War. I had first met him in 1991, in August 91. My wife and I were there together. It was post-Gulf War. It was a time where people spoke of the clash of civilizations. Coming from an apartheid past didn't help. What America and European countries gathering together to attack Iraq didn't help. It created the impression that West was against East, Christians and Jews were united against Muslims. And coming from an apartheid part really didn't help. What changed the narrative? Just when I went to the Muslim holy place, I saw people from all countries, all religions, those who didn't even believe, all welcome, but open arms. And you said, how is this possible? That people so diverse, with so much of conflict in the real world, sitting here, listening to each other, respecting each other, acknowledging each other's point, no conflict, no disorder, no discord. How is this possible? This is what it's the microcosm of what the real world should be all about. I fell in love with the place. I came back on the 6th of August, 1992. At 10 p.m. after ceremony, a ceremony in Sufism is called a zikr. A zikr is a chanting of God's names in Arabic, his attributes. Now in all other scriptures, you would say the one and only, kind, compassionate, merciful, all-knowing, wise, the sustainer, the cherisher. It goes on like that. So they say in Arabic, and at 10 o'clock when it was finished, the teacher was sitting in the corner of the room, I was sitting on the other side. He suddenly looks me in the eye, and he looks at heavenwards at the same time. So he's looking at me and he's looking upwards at the same time. And he says in fluent Turkish, and I don't speak a word of Turkish. And he says to me, my son, I am not asking you. I'm instructing you to form an organization. The name in Arabic will be Waqful Waqifin. Translated, it means gift of the givers. You will serve all people, of all races, of all religions, of all colors, of all classes, of all cultures, of any geographical location, and of any political affiliation. But you will serve them unconditionally. You will not expect anything in return, not even a thank you. This is an instruction for you for the rest of your life. In fact, if you don't get a thank you, even expect to get a kick up your back. If you don't get a kick up your back, regard it as a bonus. Serve people with love, kindness, compassion, and mercy. And remember, the dignity of man is foremost. And we've messed it up in this country with all the kind of things going wrong right now. The dignity of man is foremost. So if someone is down in the ground, don't push them down further. Hold them, lift them, elevate them. Wipe the tear of a grieving child. Caress the head of an orphan. Say words of good counsel to a widow. These things are free. They don't cost anything. Clothe the naked, feed the hungry, and provide water for the thirsty. And in everything that you do, be the best at what you do, what you guys are doing. Be the best at what you do, but not because of ego. It's because you're dealing with human life, human emotion, and human dignity. To understand that in a small way, put yourself on the other side in a disaster, in poverty, in hunger, in all kinds of crises. Put yourself on the other side, or your 4-year-old child, or your 80-year-old grandmother, or your 40-year-old wife. Put them on the other side. And if you were in that situation, how would you expect somebody to respond to you? If you can answer that question honestly, you would know that as a human being, you will strive to be the best in everything that you do, because it could have been you on the other side, and serve them with that excellence. He went on to say, my son, remember the most important point. Two important points. Khairun nas mayan fa'un nas in Arabic, translated meaning best among people are those who benefit mankind. He said, listen carefully. The word is mankind, not Muslim, not Arab, not Indian. Mankind unconditionally. And he said the final point, and the most important point, remember this, that whatever you do is done through you and not by you. I'm a 28-year witness that what he said is true. Because what I achieve is not humanly possible. And I'm intelligent enough to know that something is being done through you. And I always tell God Almighty that He does all the work and He gives me the credit. I told you, I don't speak a word of Turkish. I understood every single word that the teacher said. Yet anybody else in that platform, on that place, spoke Turkish, I just couldn't understand. And I asked him, I said, teacher, how is it possible that when you speak Turkish, I understand, and when somebody else speaks Turkish, I don't understand? He said, my son, that when the hearts connect and the souls connect, the words become understandable. I said, you gave me all the speech. What does it mean? I'm a doctor in private practice. I have 3 practices in Maritzburg, and SARS are waiting for my money. So I said, what do I do? He said, do I start a soup kitchen? Do I give blankets? Do I put up hospitals? He told me only one word, one line. You will know. For 28 years, I do know what to do, when to do, how to do, what not to do. This is a spiritual thing. It's got a spiritual gift and a spiritual blessings. That's why it says it comes through you and not done by you. And I just want to finish off with 1 or 2 examples. Very, very relevant examples. I was sitting in the airport lounge in Malawi many years ago, and I met a Malawian diplomat. And he tells me, my friend, thank you very much for what you've been doing for our country. But I want to tell you a story of some years ago. He said in Europe, there was an event, a big event, and there was a dinner after 3 days. And on the 3rd day of the dinner, the final night of dinner, they were speaking, and we said we were few African delegates in that whole conference with Europe and America and other parts of the world. And at the end of the dinner, we asked the convener of the conference, you know, all of you spoke here in 3 days. Nobody used the word Africa once. Nobody mentioned any African country once. He said, do you know why? The guy told him, Africa is not relevant. I was in Pakistan in the earthquake in 2005. We went with a mixed team, and they couldn't understand. Black guy, Afrikaner guy, English guy, Indian guy, Hindu guy, Muslim guy, and they're trying to figure out where did these guys all come from. And when they understood we were from South Africa, European teams and teams from the north said, oh, you're from Africa. What did you come here to collect? Africa always got a begging bowl. Africa always asks for things. Africa always wants things. Now who can change that? Us. We don't believe in ourselves. We want to see what the North has to offer. Why do we have to take everything from the North? What's exported from South Africa? Doctors, nurses, accountants, teachers, all kinds of learning in our universities. But we don't believe in ourselves. We need to find somebody else to show us the way. It's time we trust ourselves and believe in ourselves, and all these theses you guys are doing. It's important to convert that into something meaningful so the world can take notice and see we're making a meaningful difference. But we make the headlines, stolen PPEs, billions of contracts gone, all that kind of stuff. We need to change all that. We need spirituality, we need honesty, we need morality, and we need integrity. And education is not going to give you that unless you change something within your soul. And if we do that, we will be tops of the world. And one final point. We showed them 2 things in our history. In 1993, as South Africans, we designed the world's first containerized mobile hospital. Not now in 2020, in 1993, the world's first containerized mobile hospital, a product of South African engineering. And where did we take it? From South Africa, we took it to Europe, into Bosnia. And the CNN commentator said that the South African mobile hospital, containerized hospital, is equivalent to any of the best hospitals in Europe. In 2010, and that's the final point, we took a team and went to the earthquake in Haiti. In 40 seconds, that earthquake wiped out 250,000 people. For the first time in Gift of the Giver's history, it's an evolution. We had our own search and rescue team. The earthquake hit on the 12th of January 2010. 20th January 2010, 8 days after the earthquake, my team say we can hear sounds in the rubble in the Catholic Church. We made world history. 8 days after the earthquake, a South African team pulled out 64-year-old Enazizi from the rubble of a Catholic church alive. No water, no food, no oxygen, no medical care, fractured hip, caught up in the rubble. Never before in the history of the African continent has any team from a search and rescue team from the African continent taken anybody alive out of the rubble in an earthquake outside the continent. We were the world's first. And the world's media were watching that. Ladies and gentlemen, we got one great gift besides our technology, our universities, our desire to work. We got the spirit of Ubuntu. Let's harness spirituality in tandem with education and technology and use our learning to benefit society. Thank you very much.
I'm sure you'll all agree with me that it is no doubt why Dr. Suleiman is such a aligned, agile, and engaged managerial leader, not only a brilliant doctor. Thank you so much. Right, so we've reached the end of the formal proceedings. So before our Chair of Senate closes, I'd like to leave you with a closing thought. Why have we selected this kite analogy that you might be seeing all over your graduation invitations and things? So we've introduced it for two reasons. As Da Vinci students, you should know and have seen Prof. Anderson doing the 9 dots, but some of our guests maybe don't, so I will enlighten them. At Da Vinci, we use the 9 dots, or the 9 colored dots represented on the kite, it's also in your graduation programs, to encourage students to not only connect the dots, but to stretch their minds and think beyond what is in the parameters and social constructs, and go beyond that to collect the dots. And perhaps, Dr. Suleiman, that is why our students' thesis, besides that they're tongue twisters, are really socially relevant. They change the world. Our multicolored dots don't only represent our diversity as individuals, but also every single one of our diverse thinking, when connected and collected, emerge as the formation of a kite. Lauren Bacall once said that imagination is the highest kite that we can fly. We hope that you will always allow your imagination to help you innovate and remain curious. We hope you will let your dreams fly free and above the wind, just like a kite. Remember that the stronger the wind, the better and the higher a kite actually flies. So don't despair over any challenges you may face. We believe that your learning journey at the Da Vinci Institute has equipped you to go overcome all odds. For strong kites, just like strong people, go up against all the winds of life. We hope you will never forget your inner child. When flying your kite, never forget your curiosity and all those things that we harness as children and often lose, unfortunately, as adults. Today is the day that bold kites fly. It is in your hands to make a better world for all who live in it. Congratulations to our newest doctors. Fly free and high into the future, for you are Davincians, the most remarkable, agile, aligned, and engaged managerial leaders who influence the co-creation of authentic, sustainable societies. Never, ever forget the social relevance of each and every one of your research that you have conducted. I now call on the chair of the Da Vinci Senate to dissolve this congregation of the Da Vinci Institute. Dr. Deploy-Cilliers.
As the chairperson of the Da Vinci Institute Senate, I now dissolve this congregation of the Da Vinci Institute of Technology Management. Thank you.
It is customary at the Da Vinci Institute that we normally have our Gauteng opera singers performing the national anthem of the Republic of South Africa. Unfortunately, because of COVID regulations, we will not be able to have the singing, but we have recorded them, so that if we could please ask that we could all stand and listen to the national anthem of South Africa. After this, on the screens behind you or in front of you, you can be seated after the national anthem. We will be playing a tribute video to our graduates that we have done for you. So afterwards, please take a seat, and then we will leave the venue afterwards. The national anthem, please. So we're into the second part of our evening, which is really to celebrate with each of you over some drinks and some food and some snacks. So if I could please just ask that everyone moves a little bit closer. Prof. Klopper. Okay. Great. I've really come to understand something, and that is if an organizational identity and somebody's identity personally aligns, you really do have a synergist relationship. You find that you have more loyalty. You have somebody that really lives your dream. And I think that this is something that is really quite critical. Our dream at Da Vinci, as you may know, is to influence the co-creation of sustainable societies. The purpose is to grow agile, aligned, and engaged managerial leaders, and the promise is to co-create realities. These three things of Da Vinci are absolutely and unequivocally part of our president of the Da Vinci Institute and the Commissioner of SARS, Professor Edward Kieswetter. Our esteemed president has spent his entire career and all the work he does towards the betterment of our country, as we all know, and towards an authentically sustainable society. And that is why I say he aligns so well with our dream. When you look at the concept of being an agile, engaged, and aligned managerial leader, Prof. Kisveta, without question, is a servant leader. And servant leaders give the power to the people. They enhance those that they work amongst and with. And most importantly, they do guide and push people into a certain direction, but through stewardship. And I think there's no doubt in my mind that those around him have always followed because of this. The main principle of a servant leader is to serve those they lead. That is why those within his realm are empowered to become agile, aligned, and engaged managerial leaders, just like Davinci. Prof. Kisveta co-creates with all those in his reality. No matter what his station in life is, and I can promise you, I think we can all attest to the fact that not many of us would want your job, Prof. But the reality is, no matter where he is, he always remembers those personal touches. If you meet him tonight, I can promise you that if you meet him in 3 months' time, he will still remember your name, where he saw you, and he will remember something personal about a conversation he had with you. When he speaks about co-creating realities, he doesn't do it in a way that is unauthentic. He does it in a way that is simply remarkable, and that is to make you feel like you are part of his family, no matter what. So that leaves me with the final part of being a Davincian, and that is being remarkable. Prof, it is not only in your accolades and all the incredible things that you've done that make you someone remarkable, but rather the way in which you reach out to people, your humble nature and approach. And the thing that I love personally most about you is that you will sit down with anybody and have a conversation. Somebody on the side of the road, somebody in Parliament, and you will still show the same amount of care, compassion, and genuine, heartfelt interest. Our remarkable president of the Vinci Institute, Professor Edward Kisveta.
Thank you, Marla. So good evening. When I listen to Marla, it sounds like I'm set up for failure here. But as I welcome you to the President's Dinner, one of the highlights of our calendar, I think it's probably appropriate that we reflect on the COVID world. We're all thinking about a post-COVID world, but a little invisible little thing, because it's not even in a life form. A virus is just a bit of protein and nucleic acids and a few things stuck together, carbohydrates included, I think. And it can actually do nothing on its own. It's useless, it's harmless, it's completely lifeless. And yet when it finds itself in a host, in a human cell, in a life cell, it has this ability to replicate itself, and it has redefined normal for all of us. But I want to just share with you a little bit about the insight that, from a leadership perspective, we have experienced in SARS. And the leadership lesson really is that just because you enter into unprecedented times and because you enter into uncharted waters does not mean you must be without a plan. And even if you have to make up the plan every day. But there are 3 insights which allowed us not only to weather the crisis of coronavirus, but to actually step up our performance and accelerate our journey of transformation. But it's because there were three things that were clear to us. The first is we had clarity of purpose. We didn't only focus on what we do, what our legal mandate is, but we were very clear that we exist to serve a higher purpose, which is that the work we do transforms the lives of ordinary South Africans. If we do our work well, we can allow the employment of frontline workers to care for people who are affected and inflicted. We allow, through the work we do, for grannies to get a monthly pension without which they would be destitute, little boys and girls to go to schools and hopefully one day realize the dream of safe toilets where they don't lose their lives simply by wanting to go to the loo. And that's what we speak to ourselves every day. Our purpose above everything is what wakes us up in the morning. The second thing we had clarity of was clarity of intent. We knew what we intended and how we intended to deliver on our mandate. And I don't want to take you necessarily into what our strategic intent is. You'll probably find it in some of our documents that we've published. But we were clear about our strategic intent. And the third thing we had clarity of was clarity of vision. We knew what we wanted SARS to look like in the future. And because of that, when we had to change our plans for 2020, we did it on the foundation of clarity of purpose, clarity of strategic intent, and clarity of vision. And so, in fact, what we did, in the first week of lockdown, we went down to a staffing level of 12.5%. And we had to see through the financial year end with those few staff and most of us working remotely. And we achieved 99.9% of what we needed to collect. We then had to very slowly re-engage all of our staff around our intent. And in 100 days of lockdown, we created 30 new online digital applications because our purpose drove us to say we want to make it safe for taxpayers to fulfill their obligation and safe for our employees to deliver that service. And so in 100 days, we created 30 online applications. And today you can do everything you want to do online at SARS. There is no need for you to come to a branch. And then the other thing we did is we selected 3.6 million taxpayers. And we said, we want to make it unnecessary for you to file, because we will use third-party information and we will use artificial intelligence to do your filing for you, give you the opportunity to confirm it, and hopefully many of you have filed using that. And if you did, you would have received an assessment in between 3 and 5 seconds. And if you had a refund due to you and you were not selected for audit, you would have received your money within under 72 hours. And so those things didn't happen because on the 5th of March, we didn't have to scuttle around thinking, what are we going to do? We were clear about our purpose, we were clear about our intent, and we were clear about what the future SARS would look like. And we used the crisis to accelerate our journey. And for me, those are 3 leadership insights that I want to leave with each and every one of you who today reach an important milestone, the highlight of a scholarly career, when you achieve this level of academic excellence. And every one of you deserve the accolade and the limelight and the moment which is accorded you. But as Dr. Suleiman says, as many, when we listen to it, says, today is the beginning of your contribution through the work you've done to how you want to see this world being a better place. But remember the words of Eliot through the mouth of Lawrence of Arabia when he went back to go and save someone. And the commander said, you can't go back. it is written that we must go forward. And if he's going to be lost, it is written that he must be lost. And Lawrence of Arabia said, nothing is written. And so today, for every single one of you, nothing is written. You will take a blank page. You will proceed with clarity of purpose, clarity of intent, and a clear vision of the world you want to see, and write whatever you decide you want to write on it. Because for you and for your life, nothing yet is written. Thank you.
When I was doing my own PhD, one of the things that really made me laugh was that many generations ago, people that sacrificed sleep and joy and happiness and food and all those things were actually called saints. But in today's time, I think they are called PhD graduates, as many of you can attest. The next person I would like to call up is our Executive Dean for Research and Institutional Partnerships, Profabia Klopper, who will be introducing each of you with a gift as our PhD and doctoral graduates. I think something really that strikes me about Prof. Klopper is always, as many of you may know, the Institute was started at the behest of the late Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, and he spoke about the fact that education is the most powerful weapon with which we can change the world. And I've known Prof. Klopper actually for many years from before he came to the Institute, and he has always treated every single student as if they were his only student. And Prof, I always respect that about you, that you take education really seriously, and you truly believe and live by the words that education can change the world. So without further ado, I introduce to you Profabia Klopper.
Thank you very much, Marla. I just want to, before I call each individual student, doctoral candidate to the front, just want to say to Dr. Suleiman, yesterday we recorded video clips where all the students in a quick 2.5 to 5 minutes explained to us what their study was about. And what I will remember from yesterday, all 14 individuals were very humble. And I think they're there and they want to make a difference. And to Prof. Kieswetter, I think when I listened to how they explained the purpose, they were clear in the vision and they were eager to make a difference. And I think that is always a humbling experience to be reminded. And our Davincians, their blood is not just purple. I think they're ready to make a difference. So on a lighter note, I'm going to share with all of you some things that you will not read in the abstract, something that you might not find in the thesis, something that you might not know about each of these individual students. And the first person I want to call to the front is Dr. Ndozu Chipo. So when I spoke with Chipo and I listened to her, Chipo really go into the meaning of words and ask, what does it mean? What does I understand from this? And she explained to us in the oral defense the meaning of Ubuntu, which we in South Africa haven't thought about. So she brought to us a different lens, helping us to understand that's a much bigger concept, and she questioned that initially. In her seeking the truth, she realized there's much more. And then as Marla reflected on a very light note, the defense was ended by a choir, and we missed the choir this evening. We missed your colleagues. We want to say congratulations, Chipo. Well done. I'm calling on Dr. Sigamoni. Claudia? Now, as you might have realized, this is Claudia's second doctorate this evening. Third, yeah. And then when I spoke to her yesterday during the recordings, I asked her, what's next? She said, this is only the beginning. And I say, no, that's good. So we're enrolling the next doctor to say, yes, but that's not enough. I want to do more than that. So, Claudia, that was a challenge. And I think as Davincians, we're ready to take up that challenge. We want to be part of that. I think you've got the urge. You want to make a difference. And then the last remark, I said, so there's a lot of aspirations I haven't started yet. So, Claudia, we wish you luck in that journey, and we'll be watching you carefully. Congratulations. Dr. Elapa. Dan, you've got many interesting views. And I think what you brought us to our attention is that every person must have a voice. And during your journey, while busy with your thesis, you found your voice. And that voice you then clearly expressed to everybody, and I think you have a lot still to say, and you're not done yet. And then to Ethan, sitting around the corner, you must tell Shana, your father is very, very proud of the two of you. And I think, Dan, it's a highlight. It's a privilege to share that this evening with you. And it's good for us to know that you're not just a family man, but you also want to make a difference in each individual life out there, and you do that from the heart.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Dan.
Thank you very much. Blessings.
Dr. Serfontein. Esti, where do I start? You were saying to me you worked very hard and you thought you had this thesis under control, and then you were challenged by your supervisor and say, I'm up for the challenge. So you really worked twice as hard thereafter, and you make a difference. And I think as a mixed method study, it's a real accomplishment. And also when I reflect where you started, in the outskirts, where very few people will really know where that little town is, next to a railway somewhere. Reflecting back from there to here, and it was a railway, and these days you're in the airport transport industry. I think it's a huge accomplishment, and you can be very proud about yourself. Thank you. Well done, Esti. Dr. Leach. Guy, we always say as Davincians we have purple's blood. But if I listened to you and I spoke with you in all the engagement, I think you have wings. You're a true ambassador for the airline industry, making a difference not just in the country, but also in the rest of the world, in Africa specifically. And you have the urge to talk to everybody if they just mention the word airline, flying somewhere. And I think you must not lose that passion. Congratulations, Guy. That's just, no, sorry, Guy. Dr. Bagalu. To all the graduate doctoral candidates, you must go onto our online repository and read the theses. And I think a lot of you will read each other theses. Indira, when I look at your thesis and I listen to you, it's two different personalities. You're very short to the point, very organized, on time, and you know exactly what you want. And I think with that lens, you must go into a thesis and read that. And then we realize Indira put a lot of effort in there, and she's making a huge difference in the industry that you're currently operating in. And I don't always are convinced that everybody appreciate that. Well done, Indira.
Thanks so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thanks. Dr. Janse van Rensburg-Welling. While Linky is coming to the front, I must also say the supervisors are not here this evening, but I spoke to most of them, and they all said to me, the students really worked hard. So I think it's also for them a proud moment this evening. Linky, I'm not sure where to start. If I reflect to our discussions, and I specifically think back to the oral defense, which was really our first interaction, you said to us in the world of the deaf, when you're working at the NID, there's only about 6,000 words in the vocabulary. So a lot of the challenge is to explain to the people concepts that we take for granted. And I think as it was reflected, and it was a very emotional, to an extent, oral defense, somebody from the floor mentioned that you brought the light into the tunnel. And that light you switch on, and we can clearly see that light. So I think that we appreciate. And I think what we don't realize, besides making a difference in the life of people that don't have the same amount of vocabulary and the privileges we have, we must also understand that you are very committed to your study, so much so that you moved from Johannesburg to Wellington when she started this journey. So, Linky, well done.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Sorry. Dr. Matsangura. Notso, yesterday when we did the recordings, you were scheduled last, but you were here first. So we did that early on. So we made sure that you're in the center, middle point this evening. I think, Notso, it's an honor to have you here this evening. I think you've been in the journey after you completed your thesis, and you appreciate the effect and impact it has. And I think I listen again to abstract this evening, what people don't realize is that besides what you're doing in the specific towns in the rural areas in Zimbabwe, you're also a firm believer of the potential of the land in Zimbabwe. So as an agriculturist, believing in the agro-processing, I think we must go and read the stories and successes you already accomplished post your doctorate. And I challenge each of you, without giving away, because Nzo mentioned some of those examples to me, go and read about that, and you realize the potential value and the impact a thesis can have. And by taking up our honorary doctorate and Professor Kieswetter, you not just left it there, and there is a true testimonial of exactly that. Well done, Nzo. Dr. Muefe. Mboneni. When you and I, with the two of us, shared some ideas, I realized you're passionate about science, and I'm not sure why. I don't understand the reason behind. And maybe somebody can enlighten me on that. But I realized after speaking to you that your journey started much earlier than this evening. If we go back into the white paper, and people can have a read at that, you had a role to play. If you look at certain things that happen in a country, you were there already. So you took the opportunity and reflected on that, and that's what we find in your thesis. And I think for that, there's a privilege to tap into your wisdom and realize we've got somebody that cares for the country, somebody that cares for science specifically, and are ready to roll up the sleeves and make a difference. Well done, Mbonini. Congratulations. Dr. Nyawo. Patience, I feel a bit short. 184, that's your length.
Yeah, sure. My height.
Your height, yeah. And I think what we must realize this evening, patients stand tall. He take the high wind and he's not scared to do that. We ask him, what's the impact of your study to industry? Say, this is for industry, but there's many societies and they also industries in their own right. And we must do this and that. And you've got many, many plans. Now, what struck me, you said when you started the journey, you wanted to learn more. And I would actually say, I hope we don't stop here, that you become a student of life. We believe in lifelong learning. And in that, you took up the challenge to also understand the statistics. So you just didn't go in, you got to study the statistics, then you get into the literature. Normally we find it the other way around. Found that very interesting, so well done, Patience. We're very proud of your study, and we will look at all those influences you have in machines running without oil. Yes. And I leave that challenge to the audience. Thanks. Congratulations. Dr. De Tooy. Peter, we all listened to your abstract this evening, and I think when we ask you to explain to us your understanding of your studies, ontology and epistemology, you say, wait, let me first talk to you about transformatology. And since then, and as I got to know you a bit and spoke with you yesterday, I realized you're a true agent of change. And when I spoke to you I've also understand that you had a very colorful life and you were never scared to change, to take up opportunity. So I really hope that this is just the beginning of the next phase of change. And that, I don't know what it is, but you will keep us posted.
There's something there.
Well done, Peter. Dr. Ndlomu. Pumelelo, I'm glad you're smiling now. I saw there was a lot of emotions this evening. And when we concluded the recordings yesterday, I saw a big smile, and I'm seeing that again now. To the audience, I want to say, from all the graduates, I definitely know you the longest, and our paths crossed a while ago. But being monitoring and tracking you since then, you're a real ambassador for your profession. And I think if I look at the tourism industry and the effect you have, it's evident. And we will be looking at you with high expectations. And what we definitely want to know more about is those success stories of making a difference in the lives of people, in the lives of the industry, and how you already impact that. I think it's there. I know it's there because I read that and I know about some of that projects. But you must take that and hang it on a big bell and tell all South Africans the things we are proud of and what we can brag about. Pumelelo, congratulations.
Thank you.
Dr. Nika. You must get used to the title. Also on a light note, when during the recordings we did that yesterday, one of the questions we asked the people, what was the biggest accomplishment of your study? And it's not you, but 3 other candidates, without hesitating, said to graduate tomorrow. So you must get used to the title. Yes. Premi, I don't think the people know your day starts every day at 5 o'clock. At 4. You get up at 4, you go to the gym, and then it doesn't end at 4. You go up till 8, 9 because of the time zones you're working in. Yep. What I realized when engaging with Premi, she's a real fighter for technology and innovation. And I think if I look at what's in your thesis, I look at the projects that you're busy with, we don't argue. It's there. The evidence is already there. You're making a difference. Now, your title was about females and the role they play, but I think you take that further and you're passionate about what you do, and for that, we really applaud you. Well done, Premi. Dr. Falala. Today you lost, Safisa. But I think what we must understand, and this is important for your fellow graduates to realize, that whether you first or last, you get things done. And you're up for any challenge. And he said, even if it means I need to plant a stop sign down in the street, I will do that. I don't shy away from making a difference, and I don't shy away from taking the lead. So if you need, and that was his words, if I remember correctly, if you want to get things done, look in my direction, and I will do it, even if you just had the thought. So, Safisa, there's a lot of things we need to do in this country. And we want to do that, and I think we all understand the challenge, and we're looking in your direction, say, in your world where you are on a daily, make a difference. And we have very high expectations of you, and we're watching you carefully. And if you feel a push from the back, that's us supporting you. Well done, Safisa.
Thank you.
So we've reached the end of our proceedings, and before I call on our last speaker to close for us, I think one of the important things for me when I became an educator, those people that have known me a long time, like Franzel and Harbia, know that up in my office I've always got a saying that says, with great power comes great responsibility. And I actually used it this evening with you in the graduation. And many attribute this to Peter Parker from the Spider-Man franchise. And the reason that I actually love this quote so much is because of the dichotomy that this quote brings. And that is because very few people actually understand that that quote was actually first said by Voltaire, who certainly was a public activist and played a massive part in the Enlightenment period. So the reason that this quote reminds me so much of our last speaker is because this is what he epitomizes to me. So first and foremost, we have the Spider-Man franchise, without doubt, is able to traverse generations. You can ask people years ago and children today, and they still, they still absolutely love Spider-Man. I have a 4.5-year-old son who still thinks he's a hero. So Prof. Ben is a hero from young to old. He also has this way about him that he's got this childlike exuberance with every project that he gets involved in and everything that he tackles. The part about Voltaire and why that is so critical is the period of Enlightenment was very much about embracing one's shadow. And those of you that know Prof. Ben well understand and know that he's all about that as individuals, we should not only embrace our light, but also our darkness. And we should never forget what stands behind us and look forward, but don't forget. And the last part about that quote, about with great power comes great responsibility, I've never met anybody who, whether he's talking to you about the plants in his garden or changing the world, actually truly understands the meaning of a social return on investment. Any conversation you have with him, he will always question what is the social relevance, the social return on investment, and how will we make the world a better place. He is a true Da Vinci ambassador, having been one of the co-founders of the Da Vinci Institute. In closing, I hand over to Prof. Ben Anderson. And I did it without notes for you.
Well done. Ladies and gentlemen, one always thinks what would you say in moments like these. And I thought I want to start with something more serious and say, for those of you who've been here for quite some time, you may have sensed that the rhythm at Da Vinci has changed significantly. In the last 18 months, Da Vinci has been fortunate to engage great minds, great education practitioners from industry. And you have been part, hopefully, of that engagement. When I, as a supervisor myself and of one of my students, I'm a proud supporter of his thinking, Dr. Ilapa. Even in my engagement as a supervisor, I experienced a different rhythm from the institution. The research office has got a clear vision, has got a very clear direction where it needs to go. We're currently nationally busy with an audit on the standard of doctoral qualifications in the country. And I'm fortunate that I think because of my engagement through this institution, I'm chairing one of those panels. So one really gets a view of what is happening in the doctoral qualification type at institutions outside your own. And unknowingly, it brings great reflection and great perspective. So I'm really of the opinion that you have experienced a changing rhythm. And for those of you who want to go round 2, round 3, hopefully you will be testimony and support the idea that it's a meaningful journey. The second thing I want to talk to is that in my own examination of doctoral programs, what I am challenged with of late in the last 2-3 years is that the logical argument is not pronounced. There's a document, there's desktop research, there's even an attempt, if I may, to a methodology. But when I assess those documents as an external examiner from institutions from all around, I miss the logical argument. I miss the voice of the doctorandus. And when I listened to and read your abstracts for this graduation, I really could get a picture of the journey that you followed. And I'm quite convinced, with the support of the colleagues at the institution, that the quality of the logical and critical argument is becoming more pronounced. So from my side, I made some short notes, and I indeed, like Dr. Suleiman has indicated, I'm really looking forward in how you will impact and let the society understand your voice, because we need it. The last thing I want to talk to is, I just recently read the statistic that the World Wildlife Organization has published that the biodiversity that existed in 1970, by the year 2016, which is only 4 years back, have decreased with 68%. So 68% of what was is no more by 2016. And yet, we as an institution in our brand positioning make it very profoundly clear that we focused on contributing to the development of a sustainable society. And to you as the fellow doctorate graduates tonight, I want to let you know I am saddened by that statistic. And I'm asking myself, what are you and I doing to redo that, if possible in any way? What are you and I doing to rewind, to revisit the loss of 68% of what was left in 1970? What do we argue for wherever we are in society, and you represent many different spaces? How do you argue to sustainable development? What do you get up in the morning to and talk to sustainable development? Or are we so trapped in our procedures and our processes? Are we so accustomed to our known reality as if we know all the analyses, and therefore we assume we understand the system, and therefore we think that we're in control? I hope that you've got a deep awareness that there's a lot of work to be done. A deep awareness that the system is broken at many different levels. And you and I are participating in that system. We are either in some way fueling the bad energy in that system, or we're challenging it. And what I hope that each of you will have your voice and cherish that moment, and let your colleagues and your friends and your family and your partners and your children that join you maybe tonight, I hope they will remind you, what are you going to do with this? What are you going to give back to society, the people that you don't need to know, but which you may know they are there, they're out there? What are you and I getting up every morning and rethinking what is a sustainable society? We are not busy contributing to that. I know it's a complex subject, and I know for many people will say, well, let the scientists work that out. Well, you are the scientist. And I call on you, and I expect from you, as a fellow doctorandus, to say, let's have the conversation. With these few words, I want to say congratulations to you, to your families, to everyone who supported you, be it emotionally, be it socially, be it psychologically, be it financially, or whatever means. Congratulations to the team who made this happen. Congratulations to those people at the institution who also assisted you in making it happen. And I hope you all a real great journey, and I'm looking forward to the conversation. So please feel free to stay with us for some time and just relax and enjoy the company of peers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, and hope to have a good evening and safe travels back to your destinations. Thank you very much.